It's a good idea if you're getting into writing code of any length at all to document your code. In the case that you need to come back and modify it, or somebody wants to reuse your code, then it'll make it a lot easier to understand what you did in the first place if it's well documented. So documenting, one of the methods you can do this in Python is to use what are known as docstrings. This is actually suggested by pep157.txt. The peps are the guidelines for writing good Python code. And a Python docstring is just a string that occurs at the beginning of a module, a function, or a class, or a method. Okay, so let's look at some examples here and how they can be used. I'll close this out for a second. So here's a very simple module that you could import this. It doesn't do much. It just declares a variable, module level variable, to be the integers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, it's actually the integer 12,345. But at the beginning of this module, this is a docstring. It begins with triple quotes, ends with triple quotes. Notice that it's grayed out in PyCharm. And this is just a description of, well, this is actually a description of two things. It's a description of docstrings because it shows that you can do an example and have indentation, put new sections in, but then it also actually documents the module by giving a little description of what the module does, and then it documents the attributes that the module has. Now, there's something else that you can do with docstrings. So I'm running this in the command line now, and so I need to run the Python interpreter. And if I do that, then I can import this module. So I'm going to import mod docstring. And then suppose that I want to know some more information about mod docstring. So how do I use it? I can ask for help. And when you ask for help at the command line, then it actually prints out the docstring that we have at the beginning of this code. So if this module was stored somewhere else and we were importing it, we wouldn't have access to look at we may not have easy access to look at the Python file. So this gives us a nice quick way to get help on the module. You can also document classes. So I built this class for students, and it's got a very simple docstring at the beginning to document the module. Then inside the class, documents the attributes of the class. Notice that when you are putting in one of these docstrings, it's always at the beginning. So in this case, it's at the very beginning of the module. Notice that the author tag is moved down. If you put the author tag up here, it won't recognize that this is a docstring. It won't print out the help. And again, when you do it inside the class, this is the very first thing inside of the class. So that's a class level docstring. And in this case, I'm just listing out what the attributes are. I could also give descriptions for the various methods for the class in here. I didn't do that in this case. There is a later case that we'll be seeing where I do that. It's a much larger program and felt it was necessary there. PyCharm, when you start a docstring with a triple quotes, actually puts in these parameters and returns when you do it inside of a method. So here's a description for the init method, along with a description of their parameters and the returns and what they do. Now these are interesting because these are private methods, so we can describe them, but we're not going to be able to see that when we actually do the help. Here is a public method is student, and that has a help docstring, and then this is a protected docstring, and it says that private and protected methods are not available when you do help. So let's try this out. We're going to import classes. Now when we do this import classes, it actually does the import and actually runs it. So this is the output. There's 3 print statements. That's them right there. But we can still ask for help on classes. So when we do that, then we're going to start to see Here's the docstring for student. It has a docstring for equation. Init string is student, but I'm not seeing a docstring for the protected method student. So that doesn't print out. However, if you happen to know that that module exists, you can still get help on it. So I can do something like help classes dot, so student dot underscore student position. And if you do that, so if you happen to know the name of the module, you can get help on it, even if it is protected. And you can also have function level docstrings. So here's a module function that has a very simple function that takes the two inputs and returns their sum. And this is very similar to what we had before. We can import function, and then we can ask for help on function, the module function. So this gives us the full documentation for the module, including the module level docstring and the function level docstring. So we're seeing this docstring here. And then again, if we wanted to, we could get just the function level docstring. So we're really treating this module function as a file, function.py. We're actually treating this as a class, and as a class it has inside of it this method sum, and we can call it function.sum, and we print out the help for that, and again we just get the help for sum. So it's a good idea to use docstrings in your code. I'm going to suggest that you start doing that, and actually I'm going to require that you start doing that pretty soon. So there's going to be some lessons up there that's going to talk about putting docstrings into your code. And so here are some examples of how one does that. And you want to make sure that you give an overall view of what your code is doing, describe the various inputs, describe the various variables, and describe any outputs if there are some.